सड़क से स्टेबिलिटी तक का सफर. She did not wake up in a bedroom. She woke up to the sound of traffic, cold air touching her skin, a sidewalk that never cared who rested on it. Morning in the city came without kindness. People walked past her like she was part of the concrete, a shadow that belonged to no one. She pulled her jacket tighter, not because it was warm, but because it made her feel less exposed, less seen, less breakable. Her world fit inside a worn backpack. A few clothes, old papers, memories she could not throw away, and dreams she was afraid to believe in. She had once lived a normal life, a job, an address, a name people remembered. But loss does not ask permission. One crisis became another. A medical bill, a job that disappeared, a relationship that failed when she needed it most. And suddenly, stability became something she could no longer afford. Homelessness did not happen overnight. It arrived slowly. Missed payments, eviction notices, couches that stopped being available, friends who stopped answering calls, until one day there was nowhere left to go.
The street was not just hard, it was humiliating. People assumed things about her, that she was lazy, that she made bad choices, that she deserved this life. No one asked what she survived. No one asked how close she came to giving up. At night, fear sat beside her, not loud, just constant. Fear of being invisible, fear of being noticed, fear of falling asleep, fear of not waking up. She learned the rules of survival quickly. Which streets felt safer, which shelters were full, which faces to avoid, which kindness was real, and which came with danger. Hunger changed her, not just the body, but the mind. Time moved differently when every hour was about food, warmth, safety. Dignity became something she had to fight for every day. There were moments when hope felt foolish, when dreaming felt cruel, when the idea of a future seemed like something meant for other people, people with clean clothes, with homes, with choices. But even on the worst days, something inside her refused to disappear. A quiet voice, almost tired, almost gone, but still there. It whispered, "This is not where you end." She did not know how, she did not know when, she did not know who she would become, but she knew she was still alive, and as long as she was breathing, there was a chance. Sometimes survival looks like strength. Sometimes it looks like simply staying alive, and in those days, that was her courage.
She did not trust help when it first appeared. Trust had been broken too many times. Promises had taught her how easily words disappear. But exhaustion has a way of softening resistance. One night, when the cold felt sharper than usual, when her body shook and her thoughts slowed, she followed a line of tired people into a shelter she had avoided for weeks. The air inside smelled like disinfectant and old stories. Everyone there carried something heavy, not visible but felt. She kept her eyes down, signed her name with a hand that trembled, and waited for someone to tell her she did not belong. No one did. She was given a bed, not soft, not private, but safe. For the first time in a long time, she slept without one eye open. For the first time, her body rested before her mind. When she woke up the next morning, she cried quietly, not because everything was better, but because something had changed. She was no longer alone. The shelter had rules, curfews, schedules, paperwork, patience. It was not freedom, but it was structure, and structure felt like a bridge between chaos and control. She learned to wake up early, to stand in lines, to listen, to ask questions without shame. Caseworkers spoke to her like she mattered.
They asked about her past, her skills, her health, her hopes. Questions she had not answered out loud in years. Each answer felt like digging through rubble, painful but necessary. Some days she wanted to quit. The process was slow. Forms were confusing. Waiting was endless. There were setbacks, appointments canceled, opportunities delayed, moments when old fear returned and whispered, "This is pointless." But she stayed. She attended workshops, learned how to write a resume again, how to speak about gaps without apologizing, how to sit across from someone and believe she deserved a chance. She practiced interviews in rooms filled with strangers who understood her better than anyone ever had. Work came slowly. First small tasks, cleaning, sorting, helping. Jobs that reminded her she was capable, that she could still contribute. Each paycheck felt unreal. She held the paper like proof of existence. Housing took longer. Months passed, but one day her name was called. A small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had a door that locked. A kitchen, a place to sleep without fear. The first night inside her own space, she sat on the floor, surrounded by emptiness, and smiled, because this emptiness was hers to fill. Healing did not arrive all at once. Some nights the past followed her. Sirens still made her flinch. Silence still felt loud. But slowly she learned that safety does not mean forgetting. It means choosing not to live in survival forever.
She began to imagine again. Small things at first. Cooking meals, buying plants, planning weeks instead of hours. Dreams returned carefully, like they were testing if it was safe to stay. She was no longer the woman people stepped over on the sidewalk. She was becoming someone new, not because the world changed, but because she did. And for the first time, the future did not feel like a threat. It felt possible.
She started with nothing but determination, learning new skills, rebuilding her confidence, earning her independence. Slowly, steadily, she proved to herself that she was capable, not because someone allowed her to be, but because she always had been. Self-respect became her foundation. She no longer accepted treatment that diminished her. She learns that love does not require fear, that respect does not demand silence, that real strength is choosing yourself, even when it is hard. The woman she became was not untouched by pain, but she was defined by growth. She carried scars not as shame, but as proof of survival. She did not escape to run away. She escaped to come back to herself. This journey was not just about leaving an abusive relationship. It was about choosing dignity over fear, voice over silence, self-respect over survival. And in choosing herself, she built a life that finally felt like her own.
Work became more than survival. It became identity. She showed up early, stayed late, asked questions, learned fast. She took pride in doing things well, not to impress anyone, but to prove to herself that she was capable. Again, supervisors noticed her consistency, her reliability, the way she treated every task with respect. Opportunities followed, not suddenly, not magically, but gradually. A better position, more hours, more responsibility, and with each step, her confidence grew. She started dressing differently, standing differently, speaking differently. She stopped shrinking her voice. She stopped apologizing for existing. She began to believe that her past did not disqualify her from a future. She joined support groups and met women who carried stories like hers. Different details, same pain, same strength. Together, they shared laughter, tears, and understanding that only comes from having nothing and still choosing to rise. She realized she was not broken, she was forged.
She built routines that grounded her mornings. Coffee by the window, journaling, short walks before work. Evenings filled with simple meals and quiet reflection. She learned how to budget, how to plan, how to save. She learned how to dream without fear of disappointment. The nightmares faded, slowly replaced by thoughts of possibility. She set goals, realistic ones, then bold ones. She wanted more than stability. She wanted purpose. She enrolled in training courses, studied at night, just like she once studied survival. She discovered talents she never had the chance to explore: resilience, leadership, empathy. She found meaning in helping others still on the streets, volunteering at shelters, speaking to women who looked like she once did, tired, guarded, unsure. She did not promise them miracles. She promised them truth, that the road is hard, that the system is slow, but that change is possible if you stay. She became living proof of what persistence can do. Her life did not become perfect, but it became hers.
Financial independence became more than money. It became security, choice, and dignity. She no longer felt trapped by circumstances. She no longer felt forced to tolerate disrespect for survival. She learned that independence is not about never needing anyone. It is about knowing you will be okay, even if you stand alone. Relationships changed too. She became more selective, more aware. She no longer confused intensity with love or control with care. She learned that real love feels calm, safe, and respectful. It does not ask you to disappear to be accepted. There were moments when fear tried to return, whispering reminders of the past, but she met it differently now. She acknowledged it, thanked it for trying to protect her, and gently chose courage instead. She understood that fear.
Those early years tested Maria in ways she never imagined. She worked relentlessly. Dawn shifts cleaning high-rise offices, afternoons at a laundromat folding clothes, evenings waiting tables at a small diner where tips were meager and customers sometimes spoke slowly as if she couldn't understand. Language barriers made simple things hard: ordering groceries, filling out forms, asking for directions. She faced prejudice, too. Employers who assumed she was just another illegal, landlords who charged extra for the risk, neighbors who whispered when she spoke Spanish on the phone to her worried mother. Loneliness hit hardest during Christmas and Dia de los Muertos. No posadas, no family altar, just her alone with memories and a single candle. But Maria turned pain into fuel. She enrolled in night classes at a community college, practicing English with flashcards during bus rides, learning accounting basics from free library books. On weekends, she revived her grandmother's tamales, making dozens by hand in that tiny shared. That small operation became her lifeline, bringing in extra cash and a spark of pride. Maria saved obsessively, dreaming of her own cart or truck. She joined immigrant support groups where women shared stories of loans, permits, and pitfalls. She learned the new rules: build credit slowly, network relentlessly, never stop learning. One mentor, an older Latina business owner, told her, "America doesn't give you the dream, you take it, piece by piece." Maria listened, adapted, and kept going.
Success for her was not about luxury. It was about freedom. The freedom to lock her door at night, to rest without fear, to plan a future beyond survival. She built an emergency fund, a support network, a life that did not collapse at the first sign of trouble. She allowed herself moments of joy, travel, small celebrations, rest without guilt. She learned to forgive herself for the years she spent homeless, for the choices she made while trying to survive. She stopped viewing her past as a stain and started seeing it as a foundation, strong, weathered, unbreakable. She realized that stability is not just housing or income, it is believing that you deserve a life where you are safe, seen, and valued.
Work became a place of empowerment rather than escape. She poured her energy into building stability, not from fear, but from pride. Every accomplishment, no matter how small, felt meaningful because it was hers, earned through effort, clarity, and self-trust. She was no longer surviving, she was creating. There were days when she caught herself smiling for no reason, moments when joy arrived quietly without warning, and she realized that happiness did not always need a reason. Sometimes it appears when your life finally aligns with who you are. She became patient with herself, patient with healing, patient with growth, patient with the fact that some wounds take longer to close. She stopped rushing the process, understanding that true healing is not about speed, but depth. Her voice grew stronger. She spoke clearly, expressed needs, set boundaries without apology. She learned that saying no does not make you difficult. It makes you honest, and honesty became